Hi, I'm Holly Sexton, and welcome to Issues and Insights on HCEC-TV. I'm also with Quixie 98.3 and 94.3 The Wolf, and you can listen to the playback of this TV interview on WQXE, Quixie 98.3 and 94.3 The Wolf. And sometimes he howls, sometimes he quixies, whatever that sounds like, but today he's on HCEC-TV with us. Deputy Fire Marshal for Radcliffe, Tommy Crane, is in the studio, and we've talked a little bit about summer fire safety, but we're really going to get down and dirty because we have about 30 minutes to do that.
Sounds good.
So
Right.
Let's start with summer fire safety, including grilling and my favorite, which is fireworks.
Okay. Grilling, when it gets warm, everybody wants to get back out, start grilling and everything. Things we remind people is, you get that grill out, make sure that it's in good condition and it's not too wobbly, that the legs are sturdy on it, or the wheels and everything. If it's a gas grill, check your connections, check the hose fittings, make sure they haven't kind of gotten deteriorated or dry rotted, make sure everything's connected well.
Can they rust?
Well, they won't rust, but like the hose will get dry rot, things like that, and it will have corrosion and things. But the other thing is just make sure the tank's in good shape. That it's not leaking as well. Now the tanks will rust. But usually your fittings will. Just the main thing is that, like I said, it'll get just deteriorated over time, especially if you don't put it under a cover or anything. Mm-hmm. So you can check it pretty easy by when you turn it on. Use like some soapy water and check make sure there's no bubbles or anything. Or listen to the sound. It should be just a nice steady smooth sound. You shouldn't hear any loud hissing or anything.
Okay.
And then when you go to ignite it, the flame should be good and even, things like that.
So flames shouldn't be shooting out of it.
Right.
And this sounds obvious, but you should check it to see if there's any wildlife in there. Mamas
Absolutely.
like to have babies in grills.
Yes, birds, wasp. If you put it up and you haven't got it out for a while, then the wasp will build a nest in there. So yes, definitely. That is something to check. It's a very good point. I actually don't talk about that much, but that is true. Sometimes you get greeted by unexpected visitors that have made a home. So so definitely check that. If it's a charcoal grill, there again, make sure it's good and sturdy. That the bottom, a lot of times, if you've used it quite a bit, make sure you clean it out so that the bottom doesn't rust. The other thing is, once you get started, make sure that you keep a 3-foot safety zone, is what we tell people. Just like we tell them, in the kitchen around the stove, keep that safety distance. Keep kids and pets away. Especially since grills, unlike a stove, a grill's a little bit easier to knock over. So if you've got something, you've got those coals in there, or you've got that open flame, and somebody bumps it. Besides the fact that a grill, the entire surface is going to get hot. Even the lid, when it's closed, it's going to get that radiant heat. So you want to make sure that you keep kids and pets away. Make sure that you don't have loose sleeves. If you have short sleeves on, or if you do have long sleeves, make sure they're buttoned or a little bit tight fitting, so that you're not getting close to that flame. When you're cooking, like I said, keep the kids and pets away. And even while you're done cooking, and everything's cooling down, there again, it's still still got that. We tell people keep those grills about 10 feet away from the side of your home, or out from under any overhangs. Because you do have that potential radiant heat. A lot of people don't think about that, but I've seen some homes where the siding has been melted because they had the grill too close to the side of the house. And
are we talking charcoal, or are we talking gas, or both?
Both, because you just have that radiant heat. It gets hot enough, and you open that lid up, and if you're too close, then you'll actually start to, like I said, I've got a neighbor that's got a melted spot on their siding because of that. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Fortunately, it didn't turn into a fire.
Right. So that's something to remember is that radiant heat. So that's why we tell people keep it out from any overhangs. So if there's any flare-ups, when you're done, when you turn everything off, or you're letting those coals cool, make sure that the charcoal is good and cool before you dispose of it. Don't go. We actually had several years ago, and this will lead into about grills on apartment decks, is that we had someone who had a grill, the wind blew it over. They grilled the day before, but the coals actually were still hot enough inside, they burned through the deck on that deck and then also burn through the deck below them. So that's something to remember, that there is still that heat that is there. The other thing is talking about apartments is actually, on apartment buildings, you're not supposed to have grills on a deck or a balcony because, and that's charcoal or gas, because if there's a fire, you've got to remember you're affecting several families. You're not affecting just your home, but if there's a fire in your apartment, then you could potentially displace several families. So that's the safety concern. So you can't store them or use them on the decks or balconies. And in E-Town and Radcliffe, we both enforce that as well. It is through NFPA, but we enforce it. Both cities do. So, like I said, that's a safety thing that we want to remember. So, those are the main things with grilling. And then the other things, just don't burn your food. So,
well,
that'd
there's
be a real big bummer. Yeah. So
we are headed into a time where people buy their own fireworks. We're starting to see them at stores, and I'm sure very soon in Elizabethtown and Radcliffe and all over Hardin County, we're going to see those white tents pop up, and they're going to be for sale. So what do we need to know
that's a
about
good
fireworks?
Point. I actually, on the way here, I actually drove by 2 tents that have already been set up. So
it's happening.
It's happening. There's a process, and they'll have the tents set up before they actually put the merchandise in them. But
so buy earplugs if you're not down with that.
Right. Yep.
Which I hate it. I'm like, I have to go to work in the morning.
Yeah.
And also pets can
Yes.
run away and they get freaked out.
Yes,
And
yeah.
it's a rough time for pets too.
Yes, that is something I've seen some news about that pets, especially dogs, do not like fireworks, and that's something that bothers them. But with fireworks safety, the number one thing is we always recommend just let the professionals do it. Of course.
Yeah, you can go to an event like
Absolutely,
Elizabethtown, City of Elizabethtown hosts Founders Day. I'm sure Radcliffe has something planned.
I'm not sure. They usually do some kind of like Radcliffe Day, and they'll usually have fireworks at that.
Or a church.
Right, some of
Radcliffe
the
churches are really good about
right.
doing that.
So there are usually events planned. They'll usually be on the news. I know you guys post them on your Facebook and stuff, and then there's usually in the paper or different media outlets that you can find out about that, social media and stuff. So there are different events throughout the summer, like you said, a lot of churches will do it, or businesses will, and the cities usually have, each of them usually have an event. So we recommend letting the professionals do it because they have the training and everything, and they're a lot bigger, so it's better that way. If you do choose to use fireworks or purchase them, a lot of people do, and just remember there are rules and requirements. The best advice I can give is check with your local ordinance, because when they allowed people to start doing things like bottle rockets and stuff in the state, as far as individual fireworks, they also they allowed the cities and counties to enact their own ordinances that could be a little more strict. So you could have curfews and certain days where you can, shoot the fireworks. So I know E-Town and Radcliffe have enacted those where there are time limits where during this time period you can shoot them off, and same way with certain dates. So that's something important to remember. Check with your local ordinance and see what is allowed. Just general safety requirements, have some water handy. Make sure you know the distance. It's supposed to be 200 feet from pretty much anything, structure, cars, wooded areas. So, it's a pretty good distance. So there's some areas you're not going to be able to use fireworks. Just
so
plain and
standing on
simple.
your front porch shooting it into trees on Main Street is not a good idea.
Correct.
Do you know
yes,
what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, that's a big
that
no.
sounds
Yeah,
obvious,
yeah.
but
it does sound, but it has happened, and yes, and I know people that have done stuff like that. So
don't be intoxicated. I'm not reading
right.
off your list, but don't be intoxicated when you use fireworks. Have an adult and kids. Please be careful with your kids around fireworks.
Absolutely. Just some of the statistics that NFPA put out was, glass, will actually start to melt at 900 degrees. The sparklers that we used to play with as kids that we thought were so cool, we run around barefoot waving them around. The end of those is about 1,200 degrees. So that little piece of metal there is about 1,200 degrees.
Yeah, I've been burned a few times
right.
on the bottom.
So that's something to think about. We give those to kids and say, here, run around and have those, and and they're very easy to obtain. So just make sure, definitely let the adults do the things, and think about, that it seems kind of minor, but some of the statistics they gave were, in 2017, children under the age of 15 accounted for about a third of the injuries from fireworks, emergency room visits.
And that's unfortunate because it should be a fun time. And
it should be, yes. That's something you don't want to, ruin your family vacation by having to make an emergency room visit, because burns are very painful. And the other thing to consider when we're talking about distances and stuff, they said an average of 18,500 fires were started a year. That includes, building fires, but it also includes little brush fires and stuff like that. So that's a pretty good number nationwide for, to have fires started by fireworks. So just make sure you're paying attention, because, your neighbor, you may be enjoying your fireworks, but that bottle rocket that gets in your neighbor's gutter with leaves is not going to go over real well, so if you help burn their house down. So, but definitely think of the safety, keep some water handy, your distances, and definitely check with your local ordinance so that you don't get in trouble with the law enforcement.
Excellent. And I think that's a really great note to take. Check with your local ordinance, and I imagine that those would be easy to Google. Like if you wanted to Google City of Radcliffe fireworks ordinance or something like that, it's probably already associated on the city website.
Most of the cities, Radcliffe and E-Town, have very easy to navigate websites, and the ordinances are usually in there. I know in Radcliffe they're pretty easy to find, and you may have to do a little reading, but you can find what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Those are great tips, and I feel like we're going to have a safe summer. Some of the things that you mentioned and that you've provided before in our experiences together, I think are important and easy to have around, are the mini fire extinguishers. Mm-hmm. Also, you provided me at one point, and I really loved having it around. It was like a foam spray.
Yes,
I like that. It was inexpensive too.
Yeah. So it's handy for camping or something like that, when you've got like the small camp stoves and stuff like that. I mean, it is limited on what but it's good to have, because it's small and unobtrusive, and and you can have it sitting close by. It looks just like a can of about the size of a can of Lysol or something, so it's not a real big can.
Yeah, it's easy to travel with it. So those are some options as well, and I like the idea of just having that around. Right. And the bucket of water too. Before we go into a topic that's a lot more serious, can we talk about fire pits? Okay. There's a lot of conversation that happens in city limits about fire pits. How can we help the fire department not make so many runs when it comes to fire pits?
Well, that's a very good question. Camping fires or fire pits, the main thing is, there again, I go back to check with your local ordinance. In Radcliffe, we kind of mirror what the state says. It would be considered a recreational fire, so you don't have to get a burn permit, but there are some precautionary things to think about. Number one, kind of like grills, since there is an open flame, 10, 15 feet at least away from your house. It's even better if you can put it a little bit further. We also recommend, if you don't want to go into a lot of, digging and putting down the stones and stuff like that, look at the ones that are manufactured, like at Lowe's, Home Depot, Rural King, stuff like that, where you can find, they've got the mesh top to help keep the sparks from flying around. They're usually pretty sturdy, and you can get them in different sizes, different designs, and things like that. There again, you want to make sure you have a bucket of water handy, maybe a shovel, or if you're at your house, just have a hose handy. So that, the other thing is what we consider a recreational burn and what other people have considered recreational burn before have differed in interpretation, because, if you're going to have a small fire, campfire, or a burn pit at your house, if you can't get within a few feet of it, that's not really a recreational burn. If it's like a fire that we pull up and we're standing there and thinking, well, this is really hot, and we're still about 10 feet away, that's not a burn pit.
That sounds like a bonfire.
Right. Yeah. So there are different. If you're just just recreational, remember you have to clean. You have to burn clean lumber, like logs and things like that. You can't tear down that old shed out back and burn that lumber. That's actually state. The EPA regulates a lot of what you can and can't burn.
Like no tires,
Right.
plastic,
Right.
things that would release chemicals out into
Absolutely,
the
yes.
air.
Yeah, those things, those are regulated by EPA. That's not even the city. That's above and beyond us. Yeah, just, and besides that, you don't want to be close to that stuff when you're burning it anyway. But
Yeah.
but just limbs, branches, small things that can be burned in the burn pit. E-Town and Ratcliffe both have really good limb pickup. So if you're just trying to get rid of discarded material, just from maybe some storms or something, that's where you want to pull it out front, and they have those different times they'll come by and pick them up. But if you're doing the burn pit, absolutely your distance, try to keep it away from the house. Like I said, 10, 15 feet at a minimum. We recommend even further. Make sure that you do have a water hose handy, your bucket of water. Make sure it's completely out when you're done. Don't leave it smoldering because it could flare back up. That is a potential. I know we've seen where people have done controlled burns and it's flared back up. So make sure that it is completely out, and that would go for a campfire. If you're at a campsite, you're traveling and you're at a campground or something, check with their rules. You may have to have a burn ring or some stones or something to have that area, and then definitely make sure it's out before you go to bed. So those are things you remember. There again, watch kids. When my son was little, it just fascinating me. He could stick the edge of a stick in a fire and it would start glowing. And that was just the coolest thing. But you had to make sure he didn't run around and do something and get hurt. So I did actually talk with a gentleman one time that his son, they were at a campsite and they had a little campfire and he was playing too close and he fell and burned his forearm. And a pretty young child to have to go through, have to deal with all that. So the burns and everything. So definitely make sure that you watch kids and pets. But like I said, they are allowed. We do have people call and ask us advice on it. But as long as you keep use a little common sense and just keep it away from your home and just make sure that you do burn clean logs and everything. Nothing. You're not trying to get rid of debris or anything like that.
Excellent. And if you're watching or listening, be mindful that most of us follow the rules when it comes to that. And so you don't have to call the fire department if your neighbor has a fire pit.
Right, absolutely.
I know sometimes it's, and it's a distraction, I think, for the fire department.
Right. Sometimes just a matter of, walking over to the neighbor's fence and just looking to see what's going on.
Yeah, just take a peek.
Yeah, we're absolutely there to help, and we want to make sure that everybody's safe. But just you don't have to be a nosy neighbor. But if you think, hey, something, it's a lot of smoke coming from their backyard, just kind of go check it out. Before you get everybody there with lights and siren for the good intent call. But at the same
I smell smoke call.
Right. So we do want to make sure that it is a sincere call. So but we do have people they'll call, and it turns out to be maybe somebody fired up the grill the first time and it was maybe had a lot of stuff left over from last summer. We've gotten calls for that before. It smokes a lot, and we'll have people call, and that's all it was. That somebody had just got the grill out for the first time, and it was making a lot of smoke. So
like you're burning your dinner.
Right, yeah.
Well, now it's time to talking about something serious and very important. And I've been working in the news center for the past few months, and I worked with the Elizabethtown Police Department on a story about a child who was left in a hot car in Elizabethtown. It was a couple of Sundays ago.
Yes.
But the child is okay, thankfully, but this happens more often.
It does.
And more often we're hearing about it.
Right. I think you and I talked probably a couple months ago before that incident, and we talked about with it warming up, with the dangers of children in hot cars. And, some of the statistics, Safe Kids is one of the main body that teaches us about installation of car seats and car safety and stuff, and they have a ton of really good stuff on their website, safekids.org, and it covers everything: fire safety, bicycle safety, car seat safety. And one of the statistics they gave was last year, 2018, was the deadliest year for children dying in hot cars on record in the past 20 years.
That's heartbreaking.
52 children. And the other thing is that, one of the temperatures, on one of the reports that they gave, it was actually only 70 degrees outside, which we really don't think that's hot.
Yes, and this child that was left out in the car was a child. It wasn't an infant. The child was under 10 years old, but between 5 and 10. Anyway, and it was a 70-ish degree day, 73, 75, somewhere in there.
Right.
And the car had heated significantly
Yes.
in a short period of time.
Talking about that is, the outside temperature can be 60 degrees, but the inside of the car can be 110. So if you've got the sun, it's warming that inside of that car. So 60 degrees outside, but it can be 110 inside. And the other thing is that depending on, how humid it is and things like that, the 10 minutes, that car's temperature can rise over 20 degrees. So, a warm summer day like we get here in Kentucky, you got 80% humidity and it's going to be 90 degrees for the day.
Yeah.
That's pretty hot. So it's hot enough outside, but in the shade. But you think about being in a car and cracking the windows doesn't do it. And
you think for a short period of time too that it's
Right.
okay, and it's not safe for a lot of reasons.
Right. Talking about that, 110 degrees in the car, a child's body starts to shut down at 107 degrees. Once they reach that temperature, their body doesn't compensate anymore. So 107 degrees, their body starts to shut down. So that's why it is so important to remember that. Some things that we remind people is, if you're not the caregiver that usually takes the child with you, like to work, drop off at the daycare, things like that, maybe put your lunchbox or your briefcase in the back seat where you have to open the door and physically check the back seat to do it that way. Another thing is maybe look at putting a stuffed animal in the seat when the child's not there, and then put that stuffed animal up front with you so that you have a visual reminder, hey, this stuffed animal is usually in the back. So it's kind of out of place. Something I've always done, because when I was younger, I used to be careless and leave like my wallet and keys in the car with the windows down and stuff, and my mom fussed at me. And so I always check when I get out of the car. I just always do a visual check, make sure I don't leave anything that somebody might want to break into the car. But
Is
also,
my purse, is my laptop, is my tablet, are these
Yeah.
things out in the open?
So, something GPS or something. We always remind people, take the GPS off the window, and so just anything like that. So if you do that on a regular basis, you're going to look back and say, yeah, little Johnny's probably not supposed to be in the seat right now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And sadly, you hear stories that are just heartbreaking, like for the parent. Anyway, they're just so sad for the community, where it was an oversight.
Right.
You
know? We do live in busy times, but that's something we can think about is, almost everybody in the United States seems to have a cell phone now, and set a timer, set an alarm. So when you get to work, it goes off and you think, oh, hey, I need to check, or have somebody call you or text you when you get to work. Have
I
your
like
spouse.
the text system.
Yeah,
That's
so-
great. I've actually used the text system because a lot of time too, when you're a new parent, you're exhausted, and having that person that you can text to say, he's A-okay, or whatever,
right.
but just somebody checking in every day to say, all right. Thumbs up, or
Yeah.
whatever, just that reminder in that group text. It was really effective.
Yeah,
Say,
well-
the kid's fine.
Yeah, how'd he do it when you dropped him off at daycare?
Did he have a
today?
good day? Or
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
pick up, drop off and pick up, just as a reminder, because and sometimes there are grandparents involved.
Right,
Sometimes there are
right.
babysitters involved. If there's a lot of people helping you care for your child,
Right.
there needs to be some sort of, check-in process.
Right.
So I think that's a handy tool.
Yeah,
that we
it
can use.
is. And car seat manufacturers and vehicle manufacturers are working on different technology to maybe have like a pressure sensor where, if the child's in there, it'll let you know, something, a reminder. But for now, there are a lot of ways, that you can do that. Just, visual reminders, text alerts, things like that to just say, hey, to remind you of that.
We've got to wrap up in a few minutes, but some general summer safety rules. Do you want to share some of those?
Sure. In the fire service, we don't just respond to fires. We respond to a lot of medical emergencies. We remind people with everybody being out doing different activities, riding bikes, make sure you wear a helmet, make sure that the helmet fits, especially helping a child with that, making sure they put a helmet that fits, that they wear the helmet.
That can be a battle.
Yes, it can. Sometimes it's more a battle for the adults. And you remind them, hey, if you're telling the child to wear a helmet, why don't you wear a helmet? So that's a lesson that I had to learn, because when I was growing up, bike helmet, what was that?
Helmets. Now you have to put a space helmet on your kid,
yep.
but yes, I understand it's really important.
Wear bright clothes. That's something I see a lot is people that are out walking or running or riding a bike. Some of them don't wear clothes that make them stand out. They wear a black T-shirt, and it's especially if it's starting to get low light, or it's early in the morning, it's hard to see them. So make sure you wear something that kind of stands out a little bit and lets you be seen. And always let somebody know where you are. If you're someone who rides for a long distance, or if your child is going to the neighbor's house, make sure that you know where they're going, so that if something does happen, that you can follow and find out where they are. Same way if they're hiking or anything like that. Swimming, always make sure to watch the younger children. Have a buddy. Drowning is not one of those like you see in the movies where everybody waves their hands and a lot of times it looks like they're just swimming, but
it's subtle.
Right, because their body's trying to stay above the water. So always make sure you keep a lookout. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke, know the signs. Heat exhaustion is going to be feel faint, dizzy, excessive sweating. The skin's going to start to be cool, pale, kind of clammy feeling. Get some cramps, things like that. The pulse will be weak but rapid. So best thing to do there: stop, get in a cool place, hydrate, things like that. Heat stroke, much more serious. That'll be symptoms will be like throbbing headache. The body will stop sweating. The body temperature will be above 103. The skin will become red, hot, and dry in that case. So there again, maybe some nausea, vomiting, but the pulse now becomes rapid and strong. And then they can also lose consciousness. At that point, when you think it's heat stroke, you just go ahead and call 911.
Okay.
Because time is of essence there. Their body's already gone past that point. The other heat exhaustion, you've got those signs. You're getting the cramps, and you're feeling
maybe
like
dizzy.
Right. That's where you stop, take a break, get to a cool place, get to shade, drink. But the heat stroke it's at that point. Like I said, your body's not sweating. You've already reached that temperature. Your skin's real dry and hot. So definitely go ahead and just call 911 at that point. Better to have the ambulance and the fire department on the way than to risk.
Okay.
And so there's some things there too. So, and that's whether you're doing yard work, hiking, just stay hydrated throughout, because a lot of times you get busy doing something, you forget, hey, I need to take a break, get a drink of water, some Gatorade or something. So.
Those are all great tips, and you said check out safekids.org.
Yes,
too?
it's a very good one. Safekids.org, NFPA.org. They all have excellent summer family ideas, and things to remember that for safety.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time with us today.
Thank you.
That's Tommy Crane, Deputy Fire Marshal for the City of Radcliffe, and I'm Holly Sexton. Thank you for watching and for listening.